This is part 3 of Unit 9 about the atmosphere. Please start today by turning to your table of contents and take a moment to put today's date on pages 6 and 7. When you're done writing on your table of contents, you can turn to pages 6 and 7, and we'll be starting at the top of page 7. Thermal energy transfer is where we're starting, is when heat is moving from a warmer object to a cooler object. Now, you might remember learning some of this in physical science in the past, so some of this should feel like a review to you. The sun is the principal energy source of the Earth. So really, all of the Earth's energy can ultimately be traced back to the sun. This energy can be transferred in 3 ways. And I'm going to show you a short video that helps demonstrate those before we put them in our notes.
Transfer of thermal energy. What is it? Heat transfer is the movement of heat from a place with a higher temperature to a place with a lower temperature. There are 3 types of heat transfer: conduction, convection, and radiation. Here are 2 examples of heat conduction. First one, drinking from a metal spoon that was sitting in a bowl of hot soup. The soup loses some of its heat by transferring it to the spoon, which in turn gains temperature and conducts heat to the boy's finger, burning it. However, the boy easily solves this problem by switching his metal spoon into a spoon made out of wood. I thought this was a very good example of thermal conduction, mainly because it's something which happens in our everyday life, making the whole process of heat transfer easier to understand. Also, because it demonstrates that some materials are better conductors than others. A metal spoon, for example, will conduct heat much faster than a wooden spoon. This is mainly due to the structure of their molecules. Metals have free electrons. The second example is placing a shirt on an ironing board to be ironed. The iron loses some of its heat by conducting it to the shirt, which in turn gains some temperature. This makes it easier to iron out all those unattractive wrinkles. However, the shirt also loses some of its heat by conducting a small part of it to the iron board, increasing its temperature until thermal equilibrium is reached. I chose this method of heat transfer mainly because in it you can find not one, but 2 examples of heat conduction, from the iron to the shirt and from the shirt to the iron board. Also because it shows that by understanding the process of heat conduction, humans have developed very useful inventions, such as the iron or the thermometer. Examples of heat convection: a hot air balloon. A burner at the base of the balloon warms the air inside. As the air warms up, it moves upwards, cools, and moves round in a circular pattern known as a convection current. When the balloon is full of hot air, it lifts off the ground because the hot air inside is less dense and lighter than the cold air outside it. The second example are sea breezes. During the day, sunlight warms the land through radiation more quickly than the sea. Because hot air is lighter than cool air, warm air over the land rises, creating a lower pressure at the Earth's surface and a higher pressure at the altitude where the air is lifted to. Due to the difference in pressure, this hot air will move out to the sea, where it will cool down and sink. Air from over the sea, which is now at a higher pressure, will move into the low pressure area over land, creating a circular current as the air over the sea subsides and warm air from over land moves in to take its place. This is why, at ground level, sea breezes blow from sea to land during the day. At night, on the contrary, the land cools more quickly than the sea. Because of this, the convection current reverses, as warm air rises from the sea and the breezes blow from land to sea. Examples of heat radiation: lying in the sun to get a tan. The sun loses some of its heat, radiating it through electromagnetic waves to the earth and to the girl's skin, which in turn gains some temperature. As a result, the girl gets tanned. However, these are bad news because our skin gets darker just to protect us from the ultraviolet radiation, one of the 3 types of rays that the sun emits. Our body tries to do this, protect us, by releasing a pigment called melanin that reduces UV penetration into our cells. I found this method occurring because it does not only show an example of radiation, it also creates conscience on us to take care of our body and protect it from harmful rays. I also chose this because it shows that radiation occurs in a vacuum too. We should remember that the sun's heat reaches the earth through space, which is a vacuum. Second example, placing your hand over a bonfire to get warm. It isn't just the sun which radiates heat in all directions, so does an ordinary fire. When you place the palm of your hand over fire, you can feel the heat without touching the flame. This is because the fire loses some of its heat by radiating it to your hand, which gains some temperature through electromagnetic waves. I chose this method of heat transfer mainly because it is simple and easy to understand. Also because it shows that sun is not the only source which can radiate heat.
All right. So let's go through these three types of thermal energy transfer, starting with radiation. Radiation is when energy is being transferred by electromagnetic rays or waves. This does not require matter. In other words, it does not have to travel through atoms and molecules. It can travel through a vacuum or empty space. Now, no direct contact is required. And an example of this would be the sun warming the sand on the beach. Now, this, of course, is the way that the sun actually gets its energy to the earth in the first place. Traveling through space travels by radiation. So that's the first type. The second type is called conduction. And conduction is when energy is transferred through direct contact. So you have to have actual contact for this to happen. It does require matter. For conduction to happen, you have to have atoms and molecules involved. The energy is transferred when the molecules bump into one another. An example of this would be burning the bottom of your feet on the hot sand. All right, that when you actually touch the hot sand, that is conduction. And our third type of thermal energy transfer is convection. And we've talked about convection earlier this year, of course, as we were talking about the convection currents that occur inside the earth, in the mantle of the earth. And we compared it to a lava lamp. All right, so convection is when energy is transferred through the movement of matter, such as air, water, and magma. And convection requires matter, and it's caused by differences in density. So think back to that lava lamp example. We talked about this as we were talking about the Earth's interior. And think about how the lava lamp works because of differences in density. Something that is warmer than everything else around it will be less dense than everything else around it, so it will rise. And things that are cooler than everything around them are going to be more dense, and so they will sink. All right, remember how the lava lamp works. So an example would be when you are boiling water on the stove. The actual boiling of the water is an example of convection. And of course, you can think again of our lava lamp example. You can think of our Earth's interior example. And then certainly we have these convection currents happening in our atmosphere, in our oceans, anywhere there's a fluid like air, water, you're going to see this happening. So now you're going to go over to page 6, and there's a quick review activity for you to do. So here's the instructions. You're going to go up to the front of the room, and there is a stack of cups that have some little cards in them. You need one of those cups with cards in them and bring them back to your spot. You're going to go through the cards one at a time, and for each one of the scenarios, you're going to want to decide which type of heat transfer it is. Then write that example in the example column, so you can see that you will ultimately have 3 examples for each. And then when you're done doing that, please make sure all your cards go back in the cup. Bring the cup back up to the front. And then in the last column, in the picture column, you're going to illustrate one of the examples for each. Make sure that your illustration shows the heat transfer that is involved. So you might want to maybe do some little zoom in with molecules or add some labels or arrows or things that are going to help illustrate that point. Go ahead at this point and pause the video while you do this activity. And that's the end of